to our second Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race Press Conference. This morning it's the all-important long-range weather. So I will introduce you. In the centre of the panel we have Jane Golding from the Bureau of Meteorology, and then starting at the other end, Will Oxley, who's the navigator for Ichi Ban, Stan Honey, the navigator for LDV Comanche, then Tom Addis, the navigator for Blackjack, Libby Greenhalgh, who is the navigator for Climate Action Now, and next to me, Michael Bellingham, the navigator for Patrice. So we'll start with Jane, who will give us a little bit of synopsis on what she thinks may happen for come the start on Boxing Day and working our way through the race.
So we're looking at pretty benign conditions for the start of the race, expecting a southerly change to move through Sydney area on the evening of Christmas Eve, which means on Boxing Day around about race start that would have an east-southeasterly at around 10 knots. During the course of the 26th, as everyone moves down the coast, by the evening the winds look like they'll swing around to a northeasterly, get up to around about 15 knots, and then increase further over the next 24 hours. So on the 26th by evening should be a 15 knot northeasterly. Over the 27th, we're looking at a northeasterly 20 to 25 knots, particularly as you move through Bass Strait and northeastern Tassie. And then on the 28th, that's where the models diverge at the moment, but most likely scenarios we continue in a northeasterly on the 28th as well. So the reason for all of this is we've got a high pressure system sitting in the Tasman Sea that becomes established on the 26th and strong enough to block any fronts coming up into New South Wales and Tasmanian waters. The fronts bring the southerly changes, and so that's the reason for the consistent northeasterly. And just one other thing, conditions also at the start of the race for spectators also look quite good. Mild conditions after hot Christmas Eve, mild conditions and partly cloudy, not expecting any significant weather in Sydney or the race for at least the first couple of days.
So I thought we'd start down this end with Will Oxley, who's on a brand new TP52, geared, I believe, towards lighter weather. So Will, I just want to ask you what this forecast means for you guys.
Forecast looks pretty good. Traditionally, things end up moving quicker than the forecast this far out. So for the system to be in a sort of southeasterly around start time is quite promising, because it means that the majority of the race will be most likely in the sort of northeasterly conditions. And the timing is also good for us at the other end, where the Derwent is typically depth between 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. and the timing for a 52-footer sees us coming in on the morning of the 28th, so that's promising as well. Everyone talks about how much fun it is to go downwind, but in 25 to 30 knots on a TP52, that's a lot of wind in the eastern side of Bass Strait, so we'll be working pretty hard to look after the boat to get through those conditions.
Stan's having the pleasure of navigating that very quick downwind boat, Comanche, but as we all saw in 2014, she's a big wide boat, a lot wider than the other Supermaxes in the race, and not a fan of the light weather. So Stan, what does it mean for you?
We're delighted with the forecast for now, and it'll get us down the coast in good shape. But as Will said, it doesn't look good for us in the river. We get there at exactly the wrong time, and Comanche's not at her best in the light air, so we'll probably spend a fair amount of time in the river waiting for Will and his friends to catch us out.
That'd be nice.
Tom Addis. He's on the new, what used to be called Alfa Romeo, that took line honours in 2009, and is now Blackjack. And Blackjack is very much geared towards the lighter end of the Super Maxi. She's the one that prefers the light weather the most. So Tom, are you guys rubbing your hands with glee hearing this bit of news?
Yeah, sure. Some of these other boats might get a bit of a jump on us in the offshore stuff, but it looks like we could be coming into Tasman quite late in the day, and if Comanche and those guys start to struggle in the light, we might not be far behind them. But you know, here we are, sort of belly aching about what, you know, what conditions might not be so good for us. But I think that's called a first world problem when we've got a forecast like this. Yeah, it's never going to be that bad.
And Libby, you're on a 50-footer, and I believe she's quite quick off the breeze as well on climate action now with Lisa Blair. So, and you've come all the way from England for this race. I don't even know if you've done the race before. I don't think so. So how are you feeling about this?
I guess again, much like everyone, pretty pleased with the forecast. An off-wind forecast is always good, and means it's going to be a quick race for us. For me, obviously, personally, having not done it, I'm again pleased about that. Wouldn't want to be going upwind all the way or anything. But yeah, I think we've got a good bunch of sailors from across the world that have come together to do this. So and hopefully we'll have a fast ride down there.
Michael, you've probably done more Hobarts here than anyone else. 25, 26 now?
26.
26. And you're on a 40-footer, Patrice, and you're sailing with a crew that knows this race back to front. Good little boat. So how are you feeling about this forecast?
I'm just reminded when I was sitting on the wall last year with Roger Badham, who does a lot of the weather for the boats, and he said, make sure you enjoy this race because the weather gods always will turn against you, and next year definitely won't be good. So I'm very pleased about the forecast, and perhaps that his prediction hasn't been accurate. He modified that a couple of days ago and just said he was a couple of days out, and that the front will come, but Christmas Day. As everyone's talked about here, you can't complain about the weather forecast. We also, I think, will arrive at a good time for us during the day on the 28th. There is a prediction there of a little change down the bottom. I don't think that will bother us too much. We've spent the last 6 months trying to work on our boat to do a little bit better in the light air. We feel confident that we've been able to do that, so we're looking forward to the race and pretty keen to get going.
So do we have any questions for any of the panel, please?
I guess, Jane, in terms of the speed of the race this year compared to previous years, how would you compare it, in terms of the time that it might take for these boats to get down to Hobart?
Well, last year the northeasterlies, from memory, were a lot stronger for a longer breadth of the race, and I think there was also a southerly change that popped its head around the corner for a little bit. This year the race, the winds don't look as strong as they were. The northeasterlies don't look as strong as they were last year, but they're certainly strong enough to give some good speed.
Scott?
Well, what's the current going to do? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, there's an eddy that is probably at its maximum southern speed somewhere off Bateman's Bay. So at this stage, I'd say the current's probably going to have a minimal impact, certainly as a percentage, because if you're doing 18 knots, the current is a much smaller percentage. And then there's a little bit of negative current on the rest of the racetrack, but the big problem that we look to avoid in these sort of conditions is wind against current, where the sea state stands up, and of course then we can't, much harder to sail. Certainly a 50-footer Comanche will just go straight over the top of it.
What do you think the chances then of the lighter boats like Michael's boat, Indian, and those slightly lighter, high 40s, they'll be sort of sniffing at your heels a bit, won't they, in these conditions if they stay with you?
For sure. And mass calzone,
Yep.
they won't be a slouch in these conditions, so it very much suits a Cooks and 50 type boat. So I think that the competition will be red hot in the 45 to 55 foot range for sure. The thing will come down to the boat handling and minimising the sail damage.
And what about the Derwent? I mean, you've been in there a few times. What's your strategy when you start thinking about getting in there? And are you thinking, I mean, go east, with which shore, in which conditions? It's all going to come down to that, isn't it?
I'd be interested to think see what the other navigators say, but for me, our job is to get the boat in good shape to Tasman Island, and then we worry about the last bit. We all have playbooks for how to deal with the Derwent, but the last place we're going to share that is here.
Oh, please.
Anyone else?
Tom and Stan, you're obviously going to be battling it out for 9 honours, but does the wind conditions that we're going to see improve or perhaps hamper your chances of an overall victory as well?
Yeah, again, we're first world problems. 100 foot is a nice size to go to Hobart on, but look, I think if we're after handicap honours, we set our boats up differently. We've got very expensive in terms of handicap parts on the boat, big sails that rate very badly, all the rest. We're not. I've won this race overall a few times, and they are the most significant wins of my career. But on 100 footers, it's really not about that. So we've got parts on our boat that you wouldn't have if we were going for handicap, and also B, on this forecast you'd probably choose to be on a smaller boat, but that's where we are. Certainly not complaining. Stan.
Yeah, Comanche's pretty extreme in that category, and as I think some of you may remember, the design brief from Comanche was to have the highest rating ever. And I think we achieved that. So Comanche is very inefficient on rating. So the only way that Comanche would be in the hunt for a rating win would be somehow if we finished and everyone else fell off the earth.
Anyone else?
So Stan's been a lot of talk that Comanche might be the favourite going in. How does these conditions affect you to bring it back in a little bit closer?
I'm sorry, ask again?
A lot of talk that perhaps your boat is the favourite going into the race. These conditions maybe change that a little bit for you guys?
In terms of line honours, we like the forecast, but our biggest concern is the light at the end. And those are the conditions in which Comanche struggles. And so then the key for us would be to manage to get in before the boats that are better in the light catch us up.